I was frosting the lemon cake when I opened the kitchen window and heard my sister say I was just a contractor with no future. She didn't know I was standing right there. Hi, I'm Delaney. For years, I renovated my parents' house, paid for their upgrades, and stayed when no one else did. But that night, everything shattered quietly. The betrayal didn't come with yelling. It came with a spreadsheet, a birthday banner, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Have you ever realized your family saw you as useful but not valuable? Tell me. What would you have done after hearing that through the window? I opened the kitchen window to let the roast cool and heard my sister say I was just a contractor with no future. She didn't know I was 2 feet away. The cold air swept in with a bite curling around the dish towels and nudging the edge of the birthday banner I'd tacked half-heartedly to the trim. I didn't move, not at first. Riley's voice was clear, sharp, and rehearsed like she'd said it more than once in her head. "She's not going anywhere," she said lightly. "Delaney will always be here sanding baseboards and pretending she's chosen it." Silence. Then Mom, in that voice she reserved for her more polished thoughts, measured and false. "She won't fight it. She never has. And someone has to look after this house." I pulled the window shut slowly. No slam, just that soft click of wood returning to wood. I had spent all morning making this dinner, right prime rib resting garlic knots, proofing my grandmother's brass candlesticks freshly polished. The house smelled like cinnamon and citrus cleaner, that kind of smell that says someone is still trying. I'd even repaired the radiator in the front room before sunrise, so the guests wouldn't feel the cold that crept up through the floorboards. The irony wasn't lost on me, trying to warm a house that no longer knew how to hold me. I stayed silent. I always did, even back when Mom replaced my graduation photo with Riley's wedding portrait and said it was a more festive look. Even last year when Trent Riley's husband tried to explain how estate tax worked to me in my own kitchen while I filed property permits across 3 counties. I just nodded past the gravy and swallowed the insult like steam. Mom once told me, not unkindly, "A woman who builds things will never build a family." I believed her, and for years I thought I could prove her wrong by doing both, constructing homes by day, caring for this one by night. But now I wondered if all I'd built here was a story they didn't want me in. The doorbell broke the thought. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and answered it. Riley swept in, first coat, draped over one arm like she had an audience, cheeks pink from the cold. Smells like you outdid yourself." Again, she said, air kissing the air beside my cheek. Trent followed, handing me a bottle of wine the way someone might offer a business proposal. "Pinot. Light. Should go with, well, whatever this is," he said, gesturing at the table. "Roast?" I replied, offering a small smile. "With winter vegetables. Everything's from local farms." "Charming," he said. Dad came neck scarf askew as always, carrying a too small gift bag and the same hesitant expression he wore to every family gathering. "Where's your mother?" "In the den," I said, stepping aside. I returned to the kitchen and kept my hands moving. Cutlery, napkins, centerpiece, everything in place because that's what I did, make it all look like home, even when I no longer felt welcome in it. By the time Mom entered the room, I'd already lit the candles and set the salad out. She floated in, surveying the space like a hostess at a charity auction. Well, she began raising her glass to Miles and me, 40 years, married 60 years alive, and still entertaining in the house we built. Riley was quick to add, and to Delaney, who somehow makes it all happen. I smiled, lifted my glass, and took the compliment like a paper cut, sharp and invisible. Then came the moment that hardened something in me. To daughters who stay behind, Mom said, her voice too, even her eyes too still on mine, and hold the house together. They laughed, not cruelly, just like it was a clever line, well-timed and perfectly placed. Even Dad smiled. I took a sip of wine to steady my face. I didn't speak. That night, after everyone left, I washed the last plate in silence. The house smelled of wax and meat drippings, the aftermath of celebration. But something inside me felt hollowed. I went to my small desk, tucked beside the laundry room, the one no one ever noticed, and opened the drawer where I kept receipts. Stacks of them, labeled, sorted. Electrical plumbing permits. Every detail of every fix. Every gallon of paint. Every hour unpaid. I opened my laptop and clicked into my cloud drive. The folder I'd named House Projects sat there bloated and ignored. I created a new one, Operation Foundation. Typed slow, intentionally. Next to it, I dragged in the blueprint file I'd created for Mom's kitchen redesign, the one she now called her vision. Then the invoices, the bank statements, the Home Depot orders with my name stamped in digital ink. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. But for the first time in a long while, I wasn't numb either. Outside, a light snow had started again. It caught on the window pane just beyond my desk lamp, soft and soundless. I stared at it for a while, hands still resting on the mouse, the kind of silence that feels like the beginning of something, or maybe the end of pretending. You don't notice betrayal when it's happening in pieces. You notice it when you try to breathe and can't. It was sometime in April when I started keeping receipts in a labeled box instead of letting them pile up in the drawer. Not just because the taxes were confusing, but because I had a feeling. The kind of feeling you get when someone hugs you with one hand while hiding the other. In the spring of 2023, I ripped up the old dining room floor. No one asked me to. I just thought it was time. The tiles were loose and the subfloor squeaked. I replaced it with reclaimed oak from a salvage yard 2 towns over. It took 3 weekends and 1 strained shoulder. But when I finished, it looked like something you'd see in a design magazine. Mom had walked in, coffee in hand, and said, "Don't fuss, Delaney. You know this is your gift to the family." She said it kindly, like that kind of kindness that cuts deeper than insult. That summer, I built a new deck. I hand-dug the footing holes, ran power out for lighting, and even installed a small irrigation line for Mom's potted herbs. When Riley came by, she looked at the joists and said, "Looks solid for someone who didn't go to architecture school." I laughed, because what else was there to do? I landscaped the front lawn in August, leveled it with fresh topsoil, and laid down creeping thyme near the walkway. Colleen took credit for the design at the block party. She introduced me to neighbors as my daughter who works with wood like I was a hobbyist with glue and glitter. Autumn came. The chill returned to the garage. That's where I spent most nights after work, sorting receipts, drafting estimates for upcoming jobs, sanding old wood for a bench I never got around to finishing. The halogen light gave everything a yellow warmth. It was the one place in that house where I still felt real. Then one night, I came inside and noticed Mom was unusually quiet on the phone, whispering, her back to me. When I entered, she flipped her screen down and smiled like nothing had happened. For weeks, it repeated. Low conversations, quick closes, nervous eye contact between her and Riley. But I told myself not to make something out of nothing. You do that when you're used to being reasonable. Then came the email. It was early November. I was looking for a chili recipe on the family laptop, hers technically, but I'd used it for years. She'd left it on the kitchen counter screen, half lit. I tapped the spacebar. It unlocked. Her inbox was open. A thread between her and Trent's subject line, transfer final steps. I read it all. Every line. Once the transfer is finalized, we're covered. Delaney won't challenge anything. She never does. There was a spreadsheet attached. I clicked it. It listed dates, renovation milestones, estimated values, a proposed reassignment of ownership. My name didn't appear once. Another thread sat above it, marked V, Hale, Victor Hale. I didn't recognize the name until I remembered the card in her drawer. A holiday card, no return address, signed V. I opened the thread. They weren't just emails about finance. They were intimate, flirtatious, familiar. The pit in my stomach grew heavy. I closed the laptop slowly, carefully, and walked out of the kitchen without a sound. Down in the garage, the halogen buzzed to life. I picked up the old shoebox of receipts and dumped it out across the workbench. I laid them flat. I sorted them by project, by month, by labor hour. The sawdust clung to my sweater sleeves as I reached for the binder I hadn't touched in months, the one labeled House Structural. I flipped it open and pulled a pen from the coffee tin. That night, as the snow dusted the edges of the garage window and the heater clicked softly, I realized I couldn't trust them. Any of them. I needed help, but not from family. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in a while. Mara Chen, attorney. The line rang. Once, twice. She picked up. Delaney. I took a breath. I think I need to protect something, I said, quietly. The only thing scarier than knowing they're trying to take what's yours is realizing you've made it easy. Snow had covered the lawn that morning, softening the edges of the world. From the kitchen window, the branches looked like sketches unfinished brittle, waiting for someone to define them. I sipped my coffee in silence, watching Colleen hum over a catalog from Riley's firm. She didn't speak to me, but she smiled when I walked by like nothing about the ground had shifted. Later that day, I met Mara at a corner cafe, tucked between a dry cleaner and an urgent care. The place was quiet, the kind that makes people talk in lower tones. She wore a tailored coat and pulled a thin laptop from her bag like it was a scalpel. Her hair was twisted into a clip that never once loosened. We didn't waste time. I laid out everything: printed emails, spreadsheets, screenshots, even photographs of the renovated rooms. The receipts were sorted in a blue folder, each one labeled in my handwriting. She took her time reading. "You've been careful," she said finally. "But the house isn't in your name." I nodded. I figured, you've paid for a majority of the upgrades, and you can prove it. But ownership and equity are different animals. She tapped her pen lightly against her notepad. If they transfer the deed before notifying you, it's legal messy, but legal. You'd need to challenge it, and even then... She let the thought trail off. "I'm not trying to burn it down," I said. "Just don't want to be erased." She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Then document everything. Record what you can. Quietly. Emotionally, you're already ahead. Now we catch up legally." When I got home, I added a new tab to the master spreadsheet, Evidence Trail. I listed every purchase: custom shelving, quartz countertops, cedar mulch for the garden bed, the copper pendant lights Mom loved but claimed Riley had picked. I cross-referenced them with my bank statements and timestamps from photos I had taken mid-renovation. Then I opened the small box on my desk, 3 tiny recorders no bigger than my thumb. Voice-activated battery, efficient, discreet. I placed the first behind the living room bookshelf, angled toward the couch, where Mom took most of her calls. The second went beneath the kitchen counter, inside a drawer near the spice rack. The third carefully taped to the underside of the hallway phone stand. I didn't feel like I was betraying them. I felt like I was documenting a slow demolition. The next 3 days moved like drywall dust, fine, invisible, unavoidable. I kept busy, made muffins, washed the car, even joined Mom and Riley for coffee one morning when Trent called in to check on family plans. He joked about gifting me a secondhand CPA guidebook for fun. I smiled and offered him more cream. That night, I reviewed the first recordings. The kitchen mic caught snippets: Colleen talking about furniture delivery, Riley mentioning a tax lawyer, but nothing direct. I labeled them, dated the clips, and moved on. Then I found the moment I'd been waiting for. In the living room, between talk of centerpieces and RSVPs, Colleen's voice dropped. "After the party, we'll quietly shift the title." "Trent said it'll hold legally," Riley replied. "As long as she doesn't object." "She won't," Colleen said flatly. "She's never challenged us." I played it again. And again. The third time I didn't flinch. I just saved the clip and changed the folder name. Operation Foundation. Final. The air in the workshop felt colder than usual that night. I sat beside my walnut table, the one Riley once called a bit rustic, and stared at the row of files glowing on my screen. My father's voice rang in my head, uninvited. "Measure twice, cut once. But in this house, no one measures anything." He'd meant it about wood. He didn't realize it applied to people. The next morning, I folded laundry, scrubbed the stovetop, and restocked the spice drawer. Mom moved around me like I was part of the architecture, useful, fixed, decorative. She walked in mid-morning, holding a floral notepad. "Don't forget Riley's birthday is next week," she said, setting the paper on the counter. "I thought maybe you'd bake that brown butter lemon cake she likes." I read the list. Eggs, lemon zest, sour cream. The usual. I looked up, offering my best Sunday dinner smile. "Of course," I said. "I'll make her cake." Mom asked me to slice the cake just right. I nearly laughed. She had already sliced up everything else I gave her. The dining room glowed under the soft warmth of the chandelier I installed last summer. Candlelight flickered across the crystal glasses and bounced gently off polished silver. I had arranged every napkin into a perfect triangle, lined the table with eucalyptus sprigs, and poured water into each glass with steady hands. It wasn't nerves. It was focus. Purpose. The birthday banner read, "To Miles and Colleen, 60 years of love and legacy." One corner drooped slightly lower than the other, its tape failing to hold. I let it stay that way. I'd placed a manila folder near my plate. Plain, unlabeled, but thick enough to matter. From the kitchen, I watched Mom float between the rooms in her usual pre-dinner flurry. She checked her phone every few minutes, tapping, glancing, then tucking it under a napkin as if no one had seen. Her blouse was new ivory silk with pearl buttons. She wore her hair pinned up and her smile just as tightly. Riley arrived with her usual entrance, a gust of perfume and expensive boots, her coat falling perfectly from her shoulders. Trent trailed behind with a bottle of wine and a comment ready before anyone asked. "Thought a bold Syrah might hold its own against Delaney's cooking," he said. "Or at least give it something to argue with." I smiled. "I hope it wins then." He chuckled, pleased with himself, and handed it to me like a formality. Dad was last. He entered quietly, scarf looped around his neck, cheeks red from the cold. He greeted us softly, kissed Mom on the cheek, and settled into his usual seat beside me. He asked what we were celebrating again, and Riley rolled her eyes. Dinner began the way it always did, with too much small talk and not enough attention to what mattered. We ate rosemary roast chicken Brussels sprouts caramelized in maple glaze and my herb focaccia. Riley praised the balance of flavors. Trent remarked that I should open a side business. Mom nodded politely and shifted the conversation to how hosting has become exhausting at their age. I watched them with quiet precision. Every glance, every deflection, every time Mom touched her phone under the table. My heart didn't race. I wasn't afraid. Riley clinked her glass. "A toast," she said, already grinning. "To the house that raised us, and the hands that keep it standing," Trent added, "and to Delaney, the real general contractor of this legacy." Laughter followed. Easy, controlled, predictable. I stood up. I'd like to say something too. The room quieted. I lifted my glass. To foundation, literal and emotional, the kind you pour carefully, the kind you hope doesn't crack when it's tested. There was a pause. I set my glass down, reached beside me, and picked up the tablet I had prepared the night before. One click, and the living room screen lit up. Trent's brow furrowed. Riley leaned back in her chair. Mom's hand froze on her wine glass. The audio began to play Colleen. After the party, we'll quietly shift the title. Riley Trent said it'll hold legally as long as she doesn't object. Colleen, she won't. She's never challenged us. The room held its breath. I clicked again. The spreadsheet appeared rows and rows of contributions. Invoices, home improvement receipts, dated bank transfers. I spoke calmly. $57,450. That's what I've contributed directly to this house over the past 3 years. Every dollar documented, every project logged, every corner of this room touched by my time, labor, or money. Another click photographs, me laying tile, painting baseboards, rebuilding the porch railing in the heat of July, and then the emails. I had redacted Victor's last name out of mercy, but the tone, the timestamps, the intimacy, they said enough. Victor, miss you. Counting the days. Colleen. After the kitchen, it's our turn. Victor, she doesn't suspect Colleen I. Not yet. She's too busy building for us. Trent straightened in his seat. Delaney? This isn't how families... Your files are already backed up, I said quietly. Local copies, legal counsel, off-site archive. Mom finally found her voice. This is not the time. Dad turned slowly. His voice was almost a whisper. Are you in love with Victor? You could hear a pin drop. The heater clicked on. Somewhere outside a car drove past. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at the table, then at me, as if waiting for the script to appear in her head. Dad closed his eyes for a moment. Then, this marriage is over. He said it as if stating a weather report. Mom's shoulders dropped a fraction. Trent looked at Riley, who opened her mouth and then closed it again. I stood and picked up the manila folder. So is my silence. Dad didn't raise his voice. He just stared at the broken wine glass like it was a memory. It had fallen when he stood too fast, knocking the edge of the table with his hip. The stem snapped clean. The wine spread across the white linen like a slow bruise. No one moved. Even the candles flickered like they were holding their breath. 34 years, he said low. And this Colleen sat stiffly, napkin crushed in her hand. She blinked twice, then said, "You stopped seeing me a long time ago, Miles." Her voice was soft, as if she were reciting lines from a play she used to love. But she didn't sound broken, just tired, calculated. Riley crossed her arms. "You made her feel invisible," she said, like it was something noble. So she turned to someone who saw her. Dad looked between them both, searching for the woman he'd shared decades with. "And you all decided it would be fine to do this behind our backs." To her. He motioned to me without looking. Trent shifted in his seat, his voice cool. "Legally, I'd advise we avoid any accusatory language tonight. This situation." I stood. The napkin in my lap fell to the floor. "Thank you for dinner," I said. Dad blinked. Riley opened her mouth. Mom reached out. "I think this is where I go." "You're being dramatic," Colleen said, rising halfway from her chair. I turned toward the hallway. "I'll come back for my tools tomorrow." She reached for my wrist. Her fingers were colder than I expected, brittle even, but firm. "Delaney," she said. "Please." "This isn't what I wanted." I didn't flinch. "That makes two of us." I walked past Riley, who stepped back like I'd brushed against something she didn't want to catch. Trent looked at the folder I had left behind, but didn't reach for it. Dad sat down again slowly. His fingers brushed the broken glass off the table and into a napkin. He didn't look at anyone, not even me. I opened the door and stepped into the February night. The cold rushed up to meet me, pinching my cheeks, curling around my neck like breath from something ancient. My overnight bag felt heavier than it should have. Maybe because this time I wasn't planning on unpacking. The drive to the hotel was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. The streets blurred under soft streetlights, snow curling against the edges of sidewalks and driveways. I passed the lumber yard I used to buy from the diner that still used paper menus, the mailbox I had painted for Mom 5 summers ago. At the hotel, I nodded at the receptionist. She didn't ask questions. She handed me the key with a smile, and I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Room 312. Clean beige, impersonal. A bed too perfect. Curtains too stiff. A small desk chair lamp enough to say someone might be here, but not long. I opened my laptop. The folder was waiting, Operation Foundation Final. Inside, evidence spreadsheets, recordings, screenshots, photos, all of it. I zipped the folder and attached it to an email. Tamara Chen, subject final. Please confirm receipt. In the body I typed restraining orders, asset protection, all of it. Assume no further contact is desired. Proceed. I hit send. A moment passed, then another. Nothing crashed, nothing changed. But I felt something shift quietly, like the sound of drywall settling in an empty house. At 12:46 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Dad, I'm changing the will. I should have done it years ago. You deserve better." I read the message once, then turned the phone face down, placed it on the nightstand, and turned off the lamp. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake watching the shape of the ceiling, tracing the slow arc of light across the curtains from passing headlights. My mind wasn't spinning, it was simply turning like gears greased by grief. Around 3:07 a.m., another buzz. I sat up. Colleen's name on the screen. "Brant left me. I have no one. Please." I stared at the words. She hadn't signed it, hadn't said "Love, Mom." Just 3 short lines. I pressed and held the message, blocked the number. Then I lay back down. The heater clicked on. A faint hum filled the room. Outside snowflakes danced under the streetlight like they didn't care who was watching. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't ache. It comforted. The morning light in my new condo didn't feel warm. It felt clean, like starting over with dusted hands. It came in low across the lake, bouncing off bare walls and freshly sealed hardwood floors. No clutter, no family heirlooms, no framed portraits of people pretending. Just space. Blank space that didn't need permission to exist. I stood barefoot near the window. The birds were louder than I remembered them being, chirping like they owned the morning. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel obligated to respond to anyone. The last box sat in the corner unopened, uncaned, since the day I walked out of that house. I knelt, sliced it open, and lifted my old toolbox from its wrapping. The hinges creaked. The handle had a dent from when I dropped it 6 years ago on a concrete slab. I smiled faintly. I carried it to the window and placed it on a stool I'd salvaged from the workshop. The light caught the steel and turned it gold. It looked better here. It looked like mine. A buzz on my phone broke the silence. Mara, legal separation finalized, estate reassignment confirmed, restraining orders approved. You're free, Delaney, officially. I didn't respond right away. I read it twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because I didn't need to rush the feeling. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet like this condo, like the stillness after a storm where nothing feels urgent anymore. There was also an envelope on the counter. No return address, but the handwriting, blocky, slightly slanted, was unmistakable. Dad. I opened it slowly, tearing the seal with care. I should have noticed sooner. You were always the one building. I didn't know how to say that until now. But I see it. I see you. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just acknowledgement. We met 2 days later for lunch at a diner on the east side of Des Moines, nothing fancy. Vinyl booths, chipped mugs, a menu laminated within an inch of its life. I arrived first, choosing a corner booth that looked out over the parking lot. He arrived wearing his old tweed coat and a ballpoint pen tucked behind his ear. He ordered coffee and 2 eggs, then sat in silence for a full minute. I don't have a good excuse, he said. I was too busy looking past you. I didn't offer comfort. I let the words hang there heavy like wet lumber. I don't need you to fix anything, I said. I just need you to show up when it matters. He nodded. Then I'm here. For what's next, not what's lost. We ate without filling every silence. That was new, and somehow better. When I returned home, the light had shifted in the condo. Afternoon now, softer, warmer. I pulled open the windows and let the wind wander through. I gathered a handful of boards from the corner ones I had pulled from my old shop before I left. Some still had nail holes. Others were worn smooth from years of sanding. I stacked them against the wall where I planned to build shelves not for anyone else, just for me. Then I picked up my measuring tape. I stood in front of the blank wall near the entrance and pulled the tape gently across the surface. My pencil left a faint line just above eye level. A place marker. Not for a client project, not for a family request, just a line. For a shelf I'd build later. Maybe for books, maybe for nothing. It didn't matter. Outside, someone was walking a dog. The leash clinked as they passed, and I could hear laughter. It drifted up to the window like background music. I traced the pencil line with my fingertip, letting my breath settle into the moment. If you asked me what I'm measuring now, it's not wood or walls. It's the weight of choosing peace over proof. The morning I drew that faint pencil line on the wall, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt still. It wasn't about building something anyone else could admire. It was about anchoring something quietly for myself. In life, not every wound bleeds, and not every betrayal ends with shouting. Sometimes peace comes when we stop trying to prove we were right and simply choose to start again. I've learned that silence can be a boundary, not a punishment. And sometimes walking away is the most loving thing you can do for your own heart. If we truly want to build something that lasts, whether it's a house, a relationship, or a sense of self, we have to measure, carefully, anchor deeply, and be willing to rebuild when the foundation fails. If this story reminded you of a moment when you chose peace or when someone overlooked what you gave, feel free to share it. I'd be honored to hear. Sometimes the quietest stories are the ones we carry the longest.